What's up, everybody? So, basically, to get to the point, I 100% believe that this COVID 19 virus came from a lab. I think that if you really look at everything in totality, if you look at what they're saying now versus what they were saying then, it's really hard for me to think that this thing occurred in nature. I think it's man made. I think probably Dr. Fauci had something to do with it or helped fund part of it through, this whole gain of function things. I'm not some expert trying to prove anything. This is just me making basically a diary of my thoughts. So I'm not going to spend a bunch of time making heavily edit videos and show you all my proof. This is what I think based on the things that I have seen. Now, we know now in hindsight that there were cases that were reported in Wuhan, that some of the people had fallen ill in November. That's come out from United States intel that there was COVID-like symptoms and outbreak, at the Wuhan lab. So safe to say that would probably be, close to when it really started. I think it might have been detected possibly even earlier than that. People were reporting unexplained flu-like symptoms at the World Military Games that also took place in Wuhan back in October of 2019, which interestingly is like a Chinese conspiracy theory, if you will, that people in China believe that the United States deployed this as some type of bioweapon or whatever at that time. I don't know, but there is a lot of people. I talk to people in China. I know people in China. I'm on WeChat, and a lot of them believe that it is also man-made, that it came from a lab, and they think the United States is the ones that created it. So that's where it might differ, but a lot of them believe in that same, conspiracy theory, if you will. The things just don't really add up to me. Now, at first, interestingly, we'll get back to the whole lab theory. First of all, it's a super virus. This thing, when they're created in a lab like this, it's more virulent. It's going to evolve quicker. Basically, it becomes a super virus, something that's going to be able to circumvent vaccines. It's going to, more quickly than a nature-born virus would. These things in the lab are a little bit more virulent. I don't think it was designed as a bioweapon. I don't believe that. In fact, I think the media associates anybody asking questions about the origins with the whole bioweapon theory to kind of, group people like, oh, you're one of those crazy kooky conspiracy theorists. And if you believe that it is a bioweapon, I'm not calling you kooky. I personally, in my opinion, I think it was some type of accident that happened. I think they probably had good intentions. I think a lot of people believe that perhaps that, if it came from China, they were trying to catch up with the United States, disease control, and they wanted to show things they could do. Maybe they cut corners. I don't know. I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility that the United States government either helped fund that research or that this virus was possibly even designed inside, the United States and shipped over there. I really wouldn't know. And it's very, very interesting how this could be. There's a few theories. Again, we're not talking about the bioweapon theory. I think it was an accident. It could have also been that they found this in nature somewhere and took it to a lab to research it, and then, once in the research setting, it became more virulent and it was able to escape that way. Definitely a plausible theory. But, the really interesting thing is that the media was, and even parts of the government were really quick to shut down any conversation about this. Anybody that talked about it was considered a kook or racist. Even they used the racist thing, that it was Asian hate. And I'm here to tell you, there's a lot of Asian people, a lot of people in China that believe there's something to this, that it came from a lab. Has nothing to do with not liking the Chinese people. They're victims in all this, just like we all are. This is the fault of states that did this, meaning, countries, if you will. So you can't blame the people for this, but I mean, this is exactly how they silence people, and ban free speech. They do it for the good of public safety, and they do this really on purpose. They turn a plausible theory about a lab leak into a theory about bioweapons when maybe a vast majority of us don't really think that. We just think that maybe it was an accidental release, through whatever, poor practices or who knows. But that's, the propaganda is strong in this. It's not really what they say always. A lot of times it's what they aim to make you believe, and they're just shifting the narrative and changing the assumed landscape. Early on, they had experts coming out assuring us that it was beyond a doubt that it came from nature, and that and I believed that too at first. I thought, oh, you guys need to stop with the whole lab theory. It probably came from an animal and a jump species. But once I started to learn and hear things, I began to question that. In the early days, they censored people on Twitter, Facebook. If you were to talk about it or to bring up the lab leak theory, you're censored. And, people maybe even had their entire livelihoods ruined. And it's just kind of interesting that they would do that. And now in 2021, they're actually going back. The media is going back to their digital archives and changing their headlines and changing some of the wording of their stories to make it sound like they weren't really against it. And now they're kind of presenting the lab leak theory as plausible and something maybe worth researching. They're still not looking into it a whole lot, and it might be too late to find out the truth now, to be honest. The early days might have been where we could have really found out about it. I'm not here to blame China. I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, they did a horrible job. As far as I'm concerned, they tried to warn everybody, and I don't know that everybody listened as well as they should have. But that's a different kind of conversation. So I totally am, whoever is responsible is who's responsible, and that is really important, because this is going to, by the end of it, this is going to cause death on a scale unfathomable before in human history. This thing is going to keep evolving. It's going to get worse. Right now, it might be only, killing less than 1% or even 0.1%, but it starts evolving, and it's going to become to the point where you're not going to be able to ignore it. It's not going to go away. And hopefully in the future, those of you in the future who might be watching, hopefully I'm still around, hopefully you guys have come up with better treatments, cures, vaccines even that can overcome this thing. But there were Nobel Prize winners Peace Prize. There were Nobel Prize winners that tried to talk about the theory of it coming from a lab. They were censored, and it just kind of that's the old game. There's a lot of cloudiness around the origins of COVID-19, and if Dr. Fauci was really sure at first that it was developed naturally. Yeah, that's what he said in the beginning. Now he says that he's no longer convinced about that, so he's changed his position on it. And they're trying to cover their rear ends. I think they know this will eventually come out, and I think once it's said and done, people are gonna find out the truth. Excuse me, gotta get a drink of water. But I think there's as time goes on, a lot more evidence is going to emerge, pointing in the direction that it did come from a lab, that it was man-made, and again, it's gone from a fringe theory over a year ago in the early days to something that we need to investigate as a serious possibility. And that they know where it came from. They know it came from a lab. They're lying to us. They're not telling us the truth. That's why a lot of these methods that should be working against a normal virus, a normal illness, they're not working against this thing. It just doesn't. It doesn't add up. It doesn't add up. The theory that does add up is the gain of function it came from a lab theory. And don't forget, there was a doctor in Wuhan that tried to warn the world about this new strain of virus, and then he vanished. I believe they said he died of COVID right before Chinese New Year. And so, there's been a few people, I think, that have vanished that tried to talk about it. And it just, you got to start asking questions. This idea that we had in the early days where you're not allowed to question authority, you can't question the experts, the media comes up with their own experts. I mean, this is like the greatest censorship, gaslighting in human history. I've never seen anything like it. I never thought it could really happen in America, but here we are. They are not reporting a lot of the news that is happening, and they are just creating their own narrative, and they are not going to do anything that is going to make the Democratic Party look bad in any way. Everything is going to be spun in a favorable light for the state. They're basically state-run media. It's all politicized. They politicize the whole thing. Meanwhile, people are dying, and they're not the least bit interested in finding out the truth. They're interested in creating their own narrative, quite frankly. Now you might think, somebody watching this, that I'm some right-wing crazy extremist that was at the Capitol 6 riots. That is not true. I tend to lean more left in my thinkings most of the time. So, in fact, I am a registered Democrat, so that doesn't hold water. But that's what they try to do. They try to put us into groups and say, oh, you must be one of those, one of those people, and they try to, make people pick sides so that you won't ask questions, or if someone is asking questions, you can easily go, oh, well, I'm against anything he has to say because he's one of those people, and we don't, like those people. And it's amazing that it is working on so many of you. Free thought seems to have just kind of gone out the window. It's like, I don't know, everything has been so politicized, largely because it was an election year. But I don't understand why this was. I don't understand why they would do that. They don't have our safety really in mind. It doesn't really make sense. And from my layman idiot perspective, if you will, it seems like the lab origin theory holds enough weight that a full investigation is due. But now it's probably a little late for that, and again, I think people, maybe they thought that was a knee-jerk reaction at first. I don't really know. I mean, you did have Trump calling it the China flu at first. He didn't handle it well, and that's just the truth. For those of you that are Trump supporters, he did not handle it well. He didn't handle it with the nuance that he should have handled it. Coming out and attacking Chinese, you're gonna divide the room too, and he does that. And that's the thing, is that by him making that stance, instead of probably letting experts get up there and talk or whatever, I think he created some of that divide, a lot of it, quite frankly. And a lot of that, like, the media hates him anyway, so whatever he says, they're going to kind of say the opposite. And I mean, for better or worse, that's what's going on. And some of that, you have to blame him. Again, early in the days, there were definitely some of the Chinese officials that were suggesting that the U.S. Army was to blame for the outbreak. That is a theory that certainly does exist in China. Again, a lot of them believe it was man-made, and there it is. So they were building hospitals in China, well before a lot of us really knew what was going on. And it just, you got to question some of these things, and just kind of ask what was going on. A lot of questions were asked about when patient zero began in the U.S. and how many were infected, and things like that. And again, there is belief among people that this actually began in the United States, and we knew about it or whatnot before we really report it. Had it never got politicized to the extent that it did, there would be nothing really controversial about it. The Wuhan lab was always, the most likely origin of point. The CCP knew that from day one. Again, there's really, three reasons why the lab transmission scenario makes the most sense. I mean, first of all, Wuhan has a virus lab that specializes in this very virus. Okay, I mean that and the bat that carries it. Quite frankly, the CCP's really kind of insane overreaction when it became clear that Wuhan was the epicenter of the coronavirus, where the deadly outbreak began. I mean, read between the lines. The wet market transmission theory made absolutely zero sense because the type of bat that was involved in that is not available in caves anywhere near Wuhan, nor is it consumed for its meat. So that's kind of the thing. It sounded good at first, sounded plausible, sounded like something that could happen. I think those theories, the wet market theories, assume that the virus affected humans through some sort of intermediate, animal like a civet or a pangolin. I might be pronouncing that wrong, but not necessarily from the bat. So there's different theories. That's how I guess the first SARS virus infected humans, is it went from bats and then it jumped to another animal and then to humans, but it wasn't nearly as virulent at the time. It didn't spread nearly like this. This thing has enormous human-to-human capabilities, and at the time I'm speaking, we're dealing with the Delta variant. It even has greater. It's the most it's one of the most contagious diseases ever discovered. It is, it spreads very, very easily. The Chinese in the early days were saying that. They believed that, they were saying that it could transmit through your sewer water if you lived in the same apartment. That they were wearing goggles and eye protection because they believed it would be able to transmit through the, liquid membrane of your eyes. I mean, that's how serious they were taking this thing. And it's just, none of that negates natural transmission. Just because of all those things that I mentioned doesn't mean that it's impossible. It's certainly still a possibility that it was natural. But, I believe it was true. But unfortunately, people that tried to ask the question right away were laughed at and called racist conspiracy theorists. And, let's remember those people. A lot of people were banned from Twitter even for spreading misinformation and whatnot. And it's just pretty crazy. You consider, there was a novelist doing an op-ed for the New York Magazine that really reinvigorated this. And they were, looking at, Stephen Hilton, I think's the guy's name. He was doing, research back in January, and they got attacked for not being, experts until, some of the links that the guy shared, began being some of the same sources being used to explore the theories by the scientific community. So, I mean, it's just crazy, the amount of bullshit that's going on here. And, the amount of hubris behind using fallacious appeals to authority and attacks against the messengers. Anyone who dares to question anything, no facts were ever presented, and we just kind of trusted the opinion of the so-called experts, who of course had millions and millions of funding to lose and an election to lose. So, I don't know when people are going to finally accept that this was basically a PR cover-up and crisis management in action, all thanks to their trusted sources of information. And a lot of people were banned from a lot of different social media sites for even talking about it at the time. Hopefully they'll allow this to stay up. We shall see. And that's where I am. I think it's all going to come out, and we'll see if I'm right or wrong. Again, that's just my opinion. You're welcome to have a different opinion, of course. And I respect your opinion if you disagree, but don't just take everything the media is telling you at face value. Question it. Question the so-called experts. Just because they tell you it's true doesn't mean it's true. I mean, really. I mean, you talk about Wuhan has the only lab in China that really can deal with this type of a virus. And if you think that's a coincidence, you know, I don't really know. That seems a little wild to me, but that's it. Anyway, let me know what you think. We'll talk to you in the next one.